I think this is a potential NA leader.
I mean, if they can't be out of top A, the roster would be hard shitting the bed somehow.
And it's possible that you can just like, especially with Speedily on the horizon, you can always say, okay, we just got to drag ourselves to a playoff position. And
we're going to start things out with the Atlanta Reign. And straight away, I mean, I have this team in my A tier for no particular reason. 10 points to Gryffindor, if you get that reference. And Atlanta, I think, are done. I think we're going to mostly try and focus on teams that are quote-unquote done with their rosters. We're like beginning of April now. I mean, we're getting close enough. Like a month out from live. Almost literally a month out from live, just about. And Atlanta made a pretty interesting signing due to, I think there was a change in the cutoff date for age eligibility to join the league. And it was changed to something like August the 31st. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. I believe it changed from July 31st to August 31st.
Right.
Like unbeknownst to most people.
Interesting.
Yeah, which interesting.
Like, wasn't it only edited on like the 28th of February as well in the article?
That I don't remember.
I don't know. I have no idea why they changed it. I don't know if anyone does know. But
lobbying.
It's oh, sorry. I do know why. Steffi obviously asked. No. I think the real reason they changed it was because the season starting later,
right,
and meant that it pushed. They felt it was fair to push the dates back. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So that makes sense. But the specificity of the date change actually, funny enough, put Speedily within range of being picked up. He's suddenly eligible, and Spectra. But we'll see if that happens at all. But Speedily is a pretty hyped up plan. He got picked up for the Atlanta Reign, just announced, probably the worst kept secret in this offseason next to like Yaki, New York. Because there were just been so many rumors about it. A bunch of players across Tier 2 and Overwatch League were like, nudging at the Speedily sign up as well. His birthday is August 26th, so like he's eligible by 5 days. It's actually insane how tight this signing is. But it was also the fact that you can't use this guy until I think the third stage of this year. Like you can't use him until like the summer showdown. And I think I looked, it was week 17. Week 17 of the Overwatch League is when he's actually eligible. So it's going to take a while. So why don't we start on the DPS line of the Atlanta Reign? Predominantly, we'll talk about Speedily. We'll get to Nero, Kai, and Venom as well. But they have 4 DPS now. And originally, this was a team that I didn't think were going to go to 4-4, because 3 is pretty good. 3, if you can cover most of your bases, I think is fine, especially for a team that's going lean. And I would have imagined that Atlanta was originally a pretty lean roster. They're even below the sort of starting 8. That I say starting 8, I just mean like the 8 that you would have on your roster if you're trying to cover all the bases. So, for example, 3 DPS, 2 tanks, 1 main, 1 off tank, so you can share the role a little bit, or you can figure out who's going to be the better player based on what's the meta. And then 3 supports, 2 flex, 1 main. Now, Atlanta were actually below that. They were on 7 because they were missed out on the 3rd support. They probably don't need the 3rd support, but they went for 8 players anyway. It just so happens their 8th player is Speedily, which is going to start competing, I think, in some ways against Nero in his role, maybe even a little bit against Venom in his role as well, as far as the Tracer goes. We'll see how much of that gets played. Probably they'll allow Venom to just be still their Tracer main and Tracer specialist, but Speedily is coming into a team that's already pretty full, but also I think is probably one of the most sought after players that were available in Tier 2 that weren't eligible for this year until very recently.
Yeah, agreed. Speedily to me is a move for the long term. So like setting that aside, but not really, because I do think there are like instances where he could come in and actually be predominantly like a starter. It feels like years since I've actually seen him play, if I'm going to be completely honest, on my like acumen on what Speedily's been up to recently. I've heard stirrings about his Echo. I remember his Doomfist being quite good back on, I think it was like XL2 or some random contender team. But when you look at this like DPS trio as a whole, it makes sense, but it's a little piecemeal, if I'm going to be completely honest. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's like a little rigid in some areas. I like Nero Kai as your starting kind of duo lineup. I think Venom has ways in. I think if you can leave Kai and Nero in, I think they have quite a potent DPS duo, if I'm going to be completely honest. I quite like both of them. I think Kai is going to have quite a good time. If all things are, considered true, or if we're all agreeable on, how hit scan may or may not work. And yeah, I quite like Atlanta.
Yeah, I think like once again, it's like an off-season victory for Sephi, who usually has just like stellar off-seasons, right? Like, I don't think this year's off-season is necessarily weaker than last year's, and he got Pelican last year, so
true.
I think like it is nuts that Sugar Free even with that moved update is still not 18. I'm sure you would have loved that as well. But yeah, I'm looking at this roster and I'm not sure if there's really a weakness, and I think we're very prone to appreciating how nutty it is, just because like that's the Atlanta way. But I do look at the starting schedule for this team, and I think getting out of the blocks well is going to be very important for them this season.
I mean, let's not also forget that last season, if hypothetically we're saying that, like, which I know you're not, but I think a lot of people are saying that, when you have Rookie of the Year, like this feels like a downgrade. And I think the public's mind, and to kind of talk about what you're saying, is they have to start strong. They also didn't start strong last year. If you remember their stage 1 last year, it was quite weak. Yeah, it was quite bad, if I'm going to be completely honest. And they bounced back immediately. Well, not immediately, but they grew over the season, right? So I think if they can hold true to that with this roster, which I would imagine a lot of it's kind of the same, maybe they don't need to, per se.
My thing is like the composition of like who's on this team and what I expect them. Keep in mind, dude, if you are a team that has like so many rookies, and especially rookies from teams that won basically 95% of the matches they ever participated in.
Agreed.
I'm not saying you can't, and it's possible that you can just like, especially with Speedily on the horizon, you can always say, okay, we just got to drag ourselves to a playoff position, and then eventually, like, we get him, and, like, maybe it's an echo meta and it's over. Like, all suffering has paid off. But, like, I think just, like, probabilistically, I think this team, if this team gets rolling early, which it might, through, like, if they beat New York, bro, that is then going to be another crazy season for them. I'm pretty sure. Like, if they come out New York Justice in, like, week 1, week 2, I assume, yeah. At the same time, you can lose to Mayhem, and then it's not a shame to lose against this New York. It's probably, you should probably beat Justice as an Atlanta Reign, but fair enough. If you then go, like, with low morale into games that you should absolutely be winning every time and don't, or just one don't, boy, like now you have a morale issue internally. Very likely, right? And
true.
Yeah.
My crazy to think this is very similar to the Shy signing and the Leave signing, where you get somebody that's just like not even eligible. You're kind of just bringing them in early. It depends on what contract he's on. Imagine if he's only on, I mean, what even could he be on? If he's on a 1-year contract, when does that start? Does that start now, or does that start when he's actually eligible? Like, I don't even know legally how it works, you know?
No.
Or is he on, like...
He's fine. I think he's getting paint and probably is free to scrim, and, like, will probably get access. I think that's all.
He's already, like, he's said he'd already be... His contract already officially starts then, essentially, right?
I'm, like,
so
70% sure. Yeah.
So he'd be on, hypothetically, a one or whatever, 1+1 maybe contract. And he only has to play for the Reign for how many months? 2?
Like 2.
2, less than 3. And
Depends
then
on how long their season is, but yeah.
And then we'll see what 2023 looks like. It's a pretty insane. The point I'm trying to get to is it's a pretty insane investment from the Reign. invest on a player that's probably only going to be eligible for 2 to 3 months.
If I'm going to be completely honest, talking to some of the NA boys from contenders, like that was like top of the list every time was
I know.
Speedily,
Yeah.
and it's like
However,
it's an investment, but I feel like it's gonna pay off for sure.
It's an investment that would pay off if they're heading into playoffs and this guy just comes out and demolishes, and then Atlanta get another deep playoffs run, maybe come second again or whatever, threaten a really deep playoffs run somewhere off the back of Speedily. Then I'll be like, Seffi, you have done it. Well done. That's a brilliant pickup. I still think it's going to be a good pickup. I think he has the reputation, and he should be a pretty good player. It's just that you're not going to see that until so deep into the season,
for sure.
and then
that's
what happens unless you're investing into it as a future. Because the reason why I bring attention to the Shy and Leave pickup is that they're like franchise players for their respective team. So it's not like, oh, we pick up Shy, he'll play for 1 month, then he'll just fuck off to another team. What's the deal with Speedily? Is he on a 2 year? Does he get to play for 2 to 3 months and then he stays on Atlanta, thereby making the investment, I think, more worthwhile? Or does he just collect a dub, collect a bag for 2 to 3 months, or for the whole year, but only have to play 2 to 3 months, and then just go wherever else after that? Assuming he's got the value to go, because then that's why I'm saying, for me,
agreed,
crazy investment from the Reign to go for a player that's not eligible for solo. Like, he is 5 days off from the cutoff, so you almost literally cannot get a player that is more ineligible while being eligible. Does that make sense? Like, like unless his birthday was literally August 31st, you could not find another player that is more like at the cutoff date as far as eligibility goes.
Agreed.
The thing is,
I have to assume it's a an investment for the next season, if anything.
Dude, straight up, if you roll into Countdown Cup and for some reason Echo is meta, I mean, the stars align for you.
Dude,
right now, he's the best Echo in Overwatch.
He's not, but also you're putting it all in black. Yeah, you're like, I'm putting it all in black 23. Like, I don't know, it's a little bit, oh, if it's an Echo meta, and then there's still Pelican and Leave and Sparkle, etc.
I don't.
Not to mention, like, you're probably also not practicing. You probably also can't afford to practice with him throughout the season.
That's an interesting thing for this team in general, because they had very good practice partners. I wonder if they've finagled something with like some other team that, like,
Redbird.
Yes, but are they really the same caliber still? Like,
I think to Joe's point is, okay, maybe you've got great practice partners. How often can you include Speedily in that practice when he's not going to be able to play for you until August 26th?
Yeah, so it's not really like they have a slouch in his stead.
It doesn't it doesn't improve your team to actively give Speedily a lot of scrim time when you can't even use him for matches until way later in the season. So maybe you only start integrating Speedily into scrims properly for stage 3, which is Summer Showdown. And I believe it was, 3 weeks? 3rd week of Summer Showdown is when he's available. So getting between the break of Mid-Season Madness and Summer Showdown is probably when he should be integrated fully. But before that, you got 2 stages where, like, fielding him in scrims is probably a waste of your time.
Yeah. That's why it feels like it's like a long-term, like you said, a Shy, a Leave situation.
If it's not, it's just a lot of money you're spending for what?
And it doesn't feel like this is a short-term play. Everything to me reads long-term. It feels focused around NA. This is like your NA franchise flex DPS moving forward in this league. And Atlanta feels like they've secured him even past the contract date, right? Like it feels like Speedily has been kind of synonymous with this core of players, or it's just been kind of orbiting them in some ways.
Yeah,
so.
Well, he's definitely with 2 other AT members at the moment, but
I think, like, what?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into contract discussion on that too much, but I mean, it's interesting to see what the direction is again, because if you are going to sign somebody like this, you surely are not just doing it for a 2 to 3 month stint and then letting them off into the free market, because then you've just, you've done the work for everybody else at pretty high risk to yourself, and you don't even get to retain him for 2023. Bit of a yikes.
I'm sure like Brad's probably out here just like wishing he had still had an academy team so he could just put Sugar Free and Speedily like on that lineup and just like at best put them in Korea somewhere and just like have them
Korea somewhere.
Have them go for like in preparation for 2023 while also being able to scrim. You know,
let's we spent a long time in Speedily. Okay, we all acknowledge he's good. I think the main concern for me is, you know, how does he get integrated? What can he effectively do for this team? And what is the goal of having Speedily on your team? Because to me, it is a signing that makes a lot of sense while simultaneously making no sense.
Yes,
just based on eligibility. Makes a lot. If he could play for the whole year, I'm on board 100%.
Is he then the best AT member?
The best AT member?
It's either him or Ultraviolet, right?
Probably. Not that we're devaluing OG too much, but AT have basically all been signed now outside of WUB. I think he's the only AT member that didn't get signed. And was Iron on AT at any point? I can't remember. But pretty much all of AT, start to finish, including now even Kaluj, are on a team somewhere. So let's wrap up the DPS. We haven't even talked about the other roles yet. Let's wrap up DPS real quick. Nero, Venom, and Kai. So Joe, I think you mentioned you expect Kai and Nero to be your starters. I guess it depends on whether we will find a Tracer meta or not. That will always be the biggest question. A lot of this will come down to new heroes being introduced.
Yeah.
Because as much as Yiska brings up Echo, it's like, well, by the time we get to Summer Showdown, I'm expecting other new heroes that come out that, you know, will be way more important.
Possible.
So maybe Echo, I doubt that Echo will even be a real factor by then. And even then, like, yeah, I mean, I just think, you know, this game will probably be defined by a lot of the new heroes coming through. But they got a pretty balanced DPS line now. It does pain me that 2 out of 4 members are going to be benched at any other time, at any particular time.
Yeah.
And I believe they are now one of 3 teams that have 4 DPSs. Hangzhou, Dallas, Atlanta, the only teams with 3 DPSs. Everyone's gone for 3, which I think is the ideal number.
Possibly Valiant, right?
We'll get to them. Though.
Oh yeah, Valiant. You're right, possibly Valiant. So 4 teams out of 20 go for 4 DPS players. I think it's crazy, but
yeah.
At least I see the value in Speedily because it's kind of standout.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the rest of the DPS? Kai, Nero, Venom, we're all happy with that?
It's about as good as you could have realistically gotten with the... No, I think it's best in slot for whatever Seppi wants to do with his roster, right?
Yeah.
Is there anyone else you could... I think here's the problem. Do you, after this season, do you go to Gator and say, I want Reiner now? I don't think you can do that, dude. I don't think it's justified either. And
wait, what do you mean? You want to... What do you mean you want Reiner?
When I'm thinking about, is there legitimately like upgrades in the league that could fit the mold of like a mostly North American roster where like you could still upgrade using other Western players from other teams?
I mean, even if you had Reiner, does he play over Hawk? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just...
That's another question for sure,
we can't even think of this as like, oh, you just swap the main tank for the main tank. We're in a solo tank environment now, whereas like, I mean, shit, like any quote-unquote tank would be kind of eligible. I don't know, like...
Okay, I forgot.
Kaluj is there as well, even though he does...
Kev is an upgrade, right? Kev's the... Brad takes Kev down. Kev's the... No, I didn't. Hello?
I don't know if he would... I don't think Laz would ever allow... Yeah, I can hear you now. You're talking just the first like half of what you said previously got cut out.
Oh, sorry. Kevster. He would take Kevster every time, right? That's the one upgrade that's in the league, in my mind. That's... But
if he's available, he would never be available.
No, my point is like, can you upgrade this team? I don't think you can significantly with the restrictions that Brad has.
Do you just meet with anybody?
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, you just put all the Shanghai Dragons on this team as an upgrade.
No, you can't because that's not the restrictions that Brad is functioning under, right? Like he has to build a NA team.
So are there better NA players? Yeah, probably. I'd probably have Dante over Nero. I'd probably, but I mean, some of these discussions are kind of I don't even know if they're really fruitful because these players, you wouldn't be able to put them on the team just because of
Right.
their deals with their. I think Ryan is a different discussion because he was a free agent, so he hypothetically could have gone to this team from free agency, but Kevster was never a free agent. Dante wasn't. Was he? No, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
I actually can't remember.
Mm.
But Hydron would have been available, but didn't. How much of AT are you trying to get over? Ends up being the question. Shockwave was available. Aspire was available.
Yeah, I don't think these are upgrades over the people they have.
So apparently Dante was a FA, so maybe he would have been
Dante
available.
is
But
a good shout, yeah.
So we're talking about like actual FAs that they could have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Then those would be available,
but you're not going Reiner, right? Like if you're AT after this season, after what your tank line has done for you, you're not even interested in Reiner.
So let's move to the actual tank line now, since we're already talking about it. Gator and Hawk. I don't think Sephi had really any interest in replacing either of them, and I don't think he should. I think they both do great in their respective roles. There's no, obviously, I don't think there's any point adding a third tank. Looking at you, Boston. But if you're going to have two, you have a good main tank and a good off tank. See what meta it is. See what hero pools you get to play with, and then see who's more eligible to play during the season based on meta and etc. And that's good. Like, this is one of the positions I think they nailed, because while they just copy pasted the same two guys over, I don't think their contracts expired or anything. I think they were just still there. And yeah, I mean, as you said, the only other players they could have reliably have looked at are guys like Kaluj and Reiner. Was Space a free agent? Can't remember. Super was technically a free agent. Technically a free agent, but I think Atlanta probably wouldn't be able to compete with Shock's money there, because Shock have far more motivation to want to keep Super.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot. I mean, False was available. So really, you're just like, who on AT can I get it for tanks if I want to get it? Apparently, Space was FA, but again, you're competing against the Gladiators budget, and I don't know if Atlanta can do that.
Yeah. No, in general, I think this just is a testament, even that they did get that backline, is sort of a testament to, once again, a great offseason. Also, like, I'm not sure what the contract situation with Kai is, but keeping him is big. Nero is definitely...
I'm a little...
Yeah? What are you?
I think you're cutting in and out, Yiska. I'm hearing like a few words didn't make it through there for me. I didn't quite get what you said. Thoughts on the tank line, Joe, before we move on to sports?
Yes. I'm interested in what Gator's role is moving forward with this team. I think I don't speak out of school in saying that he had a standard hero pool when it came to the heroes that he could play for main tank, right? I think Ryan and Orisa were amongst the world class. I really can't point to too many people that would better him on those roles. And now that one of them has had a significant rework and there's one less tank, I'm interested to see what they do with him moving forward. Does he adapt to the new Orisa well? Is there really going to be much in the way of Ryan play? Do they try to force it? He's kind of my North Star, if anything, maybe next to Speedily, of like, okay, what's up with AT? Because they haven't necessarily had to play without him in the starting lineup. So if they have to, what does that look like?
Well, it looks like Hawk, I guess.
True, but do they perform without him not, with Gator not being there? They've always kind of pointed towards him as being, this incredibly vocal presence, and he's kind of does, helps out with the coaching and whatnot. So
it would really depend on meta, I think. I think depending on what the meta dictates in terms of what tanks are good, that'll probably be determining who gets playtime and who doesn't. And then, of course, any new tank that comes out, who's got to be your Malga specialist, in theory. if that's going to be an actual tank, whatever comes out, it's like, what is that hero? What role does he fit? Who's better at that hero? And I think both could compete for new heroes as well, because we've known Gator to pick up of tanks like Sigma when they first come out. So
True. Yeah, that's fair.
it's probably positive that you have two players that can compete for a starting position on new tanks as well. It's probably a good thing for the Reign. So I'm pretty pleased with that side of things. Let's talk about OG and Ultraviolet. Probably the best NA-based support duo you could have hoped for. That was probably Seffi's biggest win in the offseason. 100%.
Definitely.
OG Ultraviolet. That was probably quite a well sought after duo. Likely that Mayhem would have gone after them as well. But Reign snatched them up first. And I think individually you'd say they were good, but you might not be insane about it. Insanely pleased. Well, you'd be pleased, but you wouldn't be over the moon about it just yet. But the real value to me is that they come in together because they're so good together as a duo. Like I'm hearing stories about them being in trials, and if they're on the same team together in trials, they are just dominating, and the other team's just like can't keep up support-wise with OG and Ultraviolet being together at the same time.
I will echo the exact same things I have heard. Verbatim, the same thing. So apart, they're good. Together, it wasn't close. It was a support line diff. It wasn't close. Nobody competed. No duo competed. It was just OG Ultraviolet. To your point, though, when it came to contract negotiations, I spoke to Seffi, and he, again, to quote him, the negotiations were not as easy as they had a higher offer from a very well-respected team. That's his words, not mine. Like, this was a sought-after backline. Full stop.
100%.
How good are they in the international context?
Well, they're worse than EJ on Iziaki, but
sure.
But aside from that, it's really hard to say, man. It's really hard to say.
I feel like they're like you after this season, you're probably gonna say Shu, Scoot, Funny Astro is probably more solid, right? Finn Violence, we don't know yet.
I think Shu Skewed is a really, we'll talk about Gladiators during their preview in more detail, but that's a very special support line bolstered by Funny Astro. That's pretty nutty.
Yeah.
And the Gladiators had one of the better support lines. So yeah, I guess the question is, do they even have? Would anyone say they have the best back line in NA even? When you have Chio Fielder could be nuts. I think Fielder is still
Twilight
Sharong. Oh yeah, I mean that's a crazy good duo as well. The problem with some of these is they're not known quantities as a duo together. They're just really good individually that we know. Where Shu Skewed is on the table as like players that have played a season together and are known to be good together. Like Chio is good. Haven't seen him with Fielder, but individually they're both dynamite. Same with Chorong Twilight. Chorong Twilight might be one of the legitimate best backlines we have,
bro. Like,
that have the firepower to compete.
Oh my god.
That backline has the power to compete with like the very best. I mean, I could see them going toe to toe with Iziaki Lee Jae-gong in some respects. Even though Chorong's a rookie, like I've called this guy the next Lee Jae-gong multiple times during Tier 2 and during his Contenders career run. I mean, Finn on his own is insane. Violet is also good, except he will probably be playing main support, which is a bit funny. So Atlanta Reign would definitely have one of the top support lines on paper. I think the duo aspect adds a lot. I think it's like a greater than some of their parts kind of deal. But even then, the individual pieces are already pretty damn good. So when you have a greater than the sum of their parts combined with a really good individuality, that speaks a lot to what they can bring to the table.
Yes. And to kind of better define with like both a question and kind of like prescribing or assuming what you mean. Like when you say better than some other parts, you're talking kind of about just like you're dealing with mostly single language roster. You're dealing with Seffi's system. It's kind of loose. It works. So they've worked together. What
I mean when I say that is that they make each other even better. Like their value together is made even higher because they're together.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So instead of just being like a Chorong Twilight where they're both individually good, but we haven't seen them together, so we don't know how they work. I think that's why I said earlier, if anyone got either one of OG Ultraviolet as an individual piece, you'd be happy with it. But getting them together is almost like a set bonus from Diablo. It's a 2-piece set bonus. You also get like the little green text. You're like, oh, a little bit of an extra buff there. I didn't realize. So Yeah, that's what I mean. Greater than some of their parts, and usually that term is used to describe something not great that becomes great together. But I'm using this to describe something that's already pretty damn good, and then together they're even strong, which is really great value. So, everyone happy with that? I think that's one of the better support lines you can hope for. Definitely top in NA, for sure. One of the top in NA. Depending on how, I think the only other duos that really compete are like the Chio Fielder, Chorong Twilight, Shu Skewed, etc. Right? Myeongbong, Gungnam could be good, but because they're double flex, it's hard to say what that's going to look like. So I don't want to get too deep into that. Same with Lasher Iris. It's like double flex. We'll see. Okay, so that's the entire team. As we wrap up this preview, we need to finish out with like just overall thoughts on the roster and how good you think they are. Let's stick it into NA for now. I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole trying to compare them to APAC as well. When I mean, it gets a bit arbitrary. So just even within NA, how would you rank this team? Top half, bottom half? Would you want to give a range, like somewhere between, second to fifth? Like what? Like where do you see this team hypothetically right now on paper, and how happy are you with the roster overall?
I think they feel like a very swingy team, and I feel like I've said that a lot about Atlanta in the past. But I feel pretty strongly about it this time around as well. Weirdly enough, I don't know, maybe that just speaks to Seffi's system or the players he looks after. I think this is a potential NA leader, or could start kind of slow like they did last year and kind of grow into themselves. I'm looking anywhere from like 1 to 6. And I think that if you ask me at the end of the season, you're like, oh, Atlanta led NA the entire season, I'm like, that makes sense. And in a different universe, you tell me that they were 6 all season, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like I can see both scenarios kind of working out, or anywhere in between, really.
So when you say 1 to 6, you are making space for the potential for them to actually be first place, and then as in the best NA team.
Yes.
I think the highest probability for them is probably like peak third, fourth is where like they're most likely ending up, I think. Feels pretty top heavy once again. And then there's even some stuff where you're thinking like how good could Houston be and whatnot, but specifically towards Reina, I agree with Joe. I think first would surprise me. Just because they're so rookie heavy. And they're not that rookie heavy, but like 50-50, right? But it's also hard to measure stuff up. I think a lot of the power they had last year came at the hand of Pelican, but also of the tank line. And their entire style was dictated by that. This is now going to change significantly, of course, with Overwatch 2. I'm kind of interested how they solve the leadership thing, while Hawk is probably the more skilled player between the two. But if they can sufficiently answer these questions, yeah, then they're probably like definitely can spike higher. I think 3 or 4th is most likely.
I am not going to be brave enough to put them anywhere 1 for now. I think they could go as high as 2 if everything aligns, but I just can't see them. The thing is, once you get to the upper echelon of NA, you are definitely competing with the Dallas Fuels and the LA Gladiators. And we can talk about like, oh, Gladiators, they choke, blah, blah, blah. But if we're talking about roster quality, I mean, Glad's roster quality is unreal. So strong. Dallas as well. Upgrades from last year. I already said, I mentioned on a previous podcast episode, I think Han Bin for me is someone I expect to be an MVP caliber player this year. He should be an MVP candidate if he holds up his reputation from last year and brings that into a 5v5 solo tank environment. I mean, assuming he gets the playtime, assuming he starts, Dallas have, an MVP level player on their team. And that's alongside Fearless. So, I mean, it's just crazy stuff going on there. So it's really hard for me to put them anywhere higher than second. Even maybe second is like quite optimistic. Or maybe third is more realistic. Maybe I think what Yiska said, third, fourth is pretty good. They're definitely in my top 5. I don't think I have Atlanta below 5.
Yeah.
Absolutely would not have them below 6. So they're top half NA for sure. They should be battling for, seeding for tournaments, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the cutoff for the tournament again for NA? It's top 8, right? I mean, they're easily top 8
Yes.
without question. So
Anything lower than that would be a jump failure.
If you're out of top 8, I mean, if they
Yeah,
can't be out of top 8, the roster would be hard shitting the bed somehow.
Yeah.
be nice.
I know there's a lot of Atlanta haters out there like who want to put them like 12th place or something. Just I don't know. People just don't. People like to dislike Atlanta. They're the team that people love to hate, and people will, I think, inaccurately place them in terms of power based on like biases of just not liking the team. Like, so decouple your dislike of the team with like an objective view of how good they actually are. Like those two things are allowed to be separate here.
Yeah.
So I think they'd be comfortably 2 to 5, in my opinion. So I think that's what I said. I even my example is like, where did you put them? 2 to 5. That's actually my actual position, 2 to 5. So that's probably where I look at for NA. So that wraps it up. Atlanta Reign preview. Talked a bunch about Speedily, their new pickup. Talked about the players across the board, how good we think they are. I think we're all pretty confident this is going to be a good team. So looking forward to how they will do. Came second place in the Overwatch League last year. Heading into a new game now. Bunch of great players. Picked up 3 members from American Tornado. This is Team America plus Venom and Kai. I mean, what could go wrong? We'll find out. Tune into the air. Thank you so much for this for the preview. We're going to head on to the next one now.